Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for The Walking Dead Season 6, Episode 14, Twice as Far. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of The Walking Dead, so I have to give a spoiler warning for up to Season 6, Episode 14. If you have not seen up to this episode, you may not want to watch this video. Otherwise, some things may be spoiled for you. So, I'll be honest, I found this episode pretty boring for the first half and just thought it was another useless filler episode. That is, until Denise got an arrow through the head. That actually shocked the hell out of me. I literally jumped out of my seat and was like, what the fuck? And since that point, the episode had my full attention. I was no longer under the impression that this was just another filler episode. However, there were some things in the first half that I liked and some things in the second half that I didn't like, so let me get into those. So we start the episode with this repetitive montage meant to show that a lot of time has passed and that people have fallen into the same routine. Eugene and Father Gabriel are happy being on patrol carrying guns. Carol's happy in her new life with Tobin, and we see Morgan built himself a prison cell. Rick asks why, and he says it's to give him another option. And we see that Rosita has shacked up with Spencer. Man, I can't stand that guy. I hope he dies soon. Anyway, it's obvious she's just doing it to not be alone, and she doesn't really care about him. So then Eugene wants to take a trip with Abraham to show him something cool, and Denise wants to go on a trip to gather some medicine supplies, and she asks Daryl and Rosita to escort her, and they'd rather just go on their own, but she insists on going herself. So when Eugene arrives at his destination, he shows Abraham a place where he can make bullets. Abraham's quite impressed, but then a walker shows up, and Eugene insists on killing it himself, but doesn't do a very good job at it, and when it looks like Eugene is about to be killed, Abraham interferes and kills the walker, to which Eugene is very upset, claiming that he could take care of it himself. So Abraham is like, well, fine then, and leaves. Personally, I found this scene quite humorous. I like seeing what Abraham and Eugene's relationship is like now, and it's interesting how Eugene claims that he can take care of himself now. So Daryl, Rosita, and Denise go on their little journey. It's obvious she's out on some quest to prove herself or find herself or something like that. And I found that dynamic between the three of them really interesting. Rosita is a character I felt has been really underdeveloped and underexplored from the beginning of her introduction. You never really got a sense of who she was other than some generic Abraham's girl. So it was interesting to see her with just Daryl and Denise. And it was interesting how Denise read her as someone who wasn't used to being alone, and how Daryl at first was being all, like a loner and not really caring about anyone, but Denise got him to warm up to her and really care about her, which means through Walking Dead logic, it's time for her to die. But before I get into that, let's talk about the scene where she tries to take a walker on by herself in order to prove herself or whatever. Personally, I found this a bit cliched. I don't really buy that for her character, and of course we get another reference to the soda that she wants to get for her girlfriend. I loved how when Rosita was like, how stupid are you? Her response was, well, how stupid are you? And then read exactly what Rosita and Daryl are like, and mid-sentence she gets an arrow through the frickin' eye. So then Dwight leads a group of saviors out of the forest, and they surround Daryl and Rosita and force them to abandon their weapons as they are holding Eugene hostage. So this scene was shocking as hell, and I loved it, but I was thinking several things at this stage. One, that the moral of this episode seems to be that weak people should know their place and not try to act like badasses because you'll just get killed. Because Denise wanted to be tough and go out and learn to kill walkers, and then she gets an arrow through the eye, and Eugene thinks he's this big badass now, and then he gets captured by the saviors. And of course, the other moral I got from this is the same moral that the show has drilled into my head over and over and over and over and over again, that whenever you leave someone alive, they come back and kill you. They even foreshadowed this a bit clunkily earlier in the episode when Daryl told Carol he should have killed those guys, and lo and behold, those same guys show up and prove him right by killing Denise. And he even mentions this again: I should have killed you. I'm sorry, but I'm getting a tad bit sick of this particular moral. So in the next scene, I found that I was mistaken about what they were telling me about Eugene, as he does actually prove himself. At first, you think he's fucking up because he tells the Saviors about Abraham and calls him an asshole, and because that they left in anger, the show's trying to fake you out to make you think that Eugene is genuinely trying to get Abraham killed, but I didn't fall for that for a second. I knew it was part of a bigger plan to get the Saviors. It was funny too because Eugene was trying to, shoot Daryl and Rosita looks like "get ready," but they weren't actually paying attention to him. They were just looking for Abraham. But that didn't stop Eugene. He went straight for biting Dwight's dick. And as soon as that started, Abraham started shooting all the motherfuckers, and of course he wasn't where Eugene said he was, so he managed to ambush them, and then Daryl and Rosita were ready. They grabbed their guns and started shooting. So then Dwight calls for a retreat, which doesn't surprise me because I know he's going to be a reoccurring character, so he needs to leave this situation in one piece. But as he's leaving, he shoots a couple of shots for good measure, and I knew, even though they didn't show those yet, that he was shooting Eugene, as they give us this dramatic slow pan to reveal that Eugene has been shot. And honestly, I thought that he was dead. I'm actually surprised that he survived this because I felt they were going to drill into us that the weak people shouldn't try to fight. And I like Eugene's attitude after he wakes. He's still, berating Abraham, and it's just like, you should apologize to me. But at this stage, Abraham, obliges him and tells him that he's a real dick biter. And that scene was pretty funny. So now, let me talk about Denise's death, because for a long time I've been trying to guess at who would die this season, and Denise is by no means a main character, so it's not that big of a death, and I do think we will get more deaths before the season is over, but Denise really surprised me. I mean, at the start of the episode, when they showed people going off in small groups, it was very present in my mind that these people were putting themselves in danger, and any one of them could be ambushed by some saviors and die. But honestly, I didn't think it would be Denise, because everybody loves Denise, and she was one of the more interesting characters to be introduced this season. Honestly, I feel Denise is a more developed character than Rosita, but I suppose I shouldn't be that surprised because it's like The Walking Dead to have a somewhat minor character have an episode focused on them and then they die. That's par for the course for The Walking Dead. So the other thing, is, as I said before, the Saviors had the advantage because the Alexandrians all think that all the Saviors are dead, and they don't realize that there's still a lot of them out there. So they all drop their guard, and to their credit, the Saviors did try to take advantage of this by biding their time and setting up a trap, and it's almost successful, although I don't think Rosita or Daryl would have actually led them to Alexandria. I think they would have died before doing this, but that's just my guess. But since the ambush failed, the Saviors now lost their advantage, and now the Alexandrians will be on guard and prepared for an attack. I still think that the Saviors will show up with Heath and Tara as prisoners, but we'll see. So the last thing I gotta talk about is the whole Carol thing and how she runs away because it was proven in this episode that if you don't kill, then people die. So she's sick of killing to protect other people, so she decides to leave. Personally, I'm not buying this sudden change of character in her, and I think it's very bland and poorly written. I also think it's clear-cut sign that she's going to die this year, but we'll see. But a lot of people blame Morgan for this character change, and to be fair, I do think he had an impact on her, but her philosophy is different than Morgan's, because Morgan thinks you don't have to kill people, and Carol acknowledges that you do have to kill people, but she no longer wants to. But either way, I don't like what they're doing with the character, and she's going off on her own, meaning that she might get caught by some saviors. So I wouldn't be surprised if she takes Glenn's storyline from the comics, but we'll see. So my rating for Twice as Far out of 10 is a 7, very good. The first half of the episode was boring, featured a lot of cliches, but the back half of the episode was amazingly super tense and had me on the edge of my seat, but then ended with a ridiculous storyline with Carol. So kind of a mixed bag of an episode, but it had it was pretty good, decent episode. So that's it for my review of Twice as Far. Be sure to check back here every week for reviews on The Walking Dead, and be sure to check out my channel for many more videos on shows like Game of Thrones, Star Trek, Better Call Saul, Vikings, House of Cards, and more. And make sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. Thanks a lot for watching.